As you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace that you visited as well.
The tension between the U.S. and Canada has recently escalated to another level as Mark Carney declared, "Canada is not for sale." What led to this fiery outburst? Will Canada survive this? And what has been Trump's response so far? This simmering trade war, sparked by the U.S. heavyweight tariffs on Canadian goods, has strained a decades-long partnership as industries have faltered, leading to public frustration. The stakes couldn't have been higher. From Canadian streets to global capitals, the message is clear. Canada's independence is non-negotiable. This dramatic confrontation began in early 2025 when President Trump's administration imposed sweeping 25% tariffs on Canadian imports of steel, aluminum, and automobiles, citing trade imbalances and national security concerns. These measures, announced in February 2025, sent shockwaves through Canada's economy, raising costs for industries and threatening jobs in sectors like automotive and agriculture. The Canadian dollar wavered, and businesses faced uncertainty as supply chains strained under the weight of protectionism. But Canada didn't sit idly. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, retaliated with 60 billion Canadian dollars in tariffs on U.S. goods, targeting everything from whiskey to machinery, according to BC News. This tit-for-tat escalation marked the onset of a full-blown trade war, weakening the historically amicable ties between the two nations. Public sentiment in Canada grew restless, with polls showing 68% of Canadians worried about economic stability, according to Global News. Small businesses, farmers, and manufacturers bore the brunt as prices rose and exports dwindled. Yet amidst the economic turbulence, a deeper concern emerged: the erosion of Canada's autonomy, as Trump's tariffs weren't just about trade. It was only part of a broader plan for U.S. dominance. As tensions mounted, the stage was set for a critical meeting at the White House, where the future of Canada's sovereignty would hang in the balance. And this wasn't just a trade dispute. It was a test of national resolve, and the outcome was totally unexpected. On May 6, 2025, Prime Minister Carney stepped onto the global stage, entering the White House for a high-stakes summit with President Trump. The agenda was clear and simple: to address the escalating trade tensions and reaffirm the Canada-U.S. partnership. But what unfolded was a diplomatic clash that would echo across continents for a long time. The meeting, which was held in the Roosevelt Room, began cordially, and Carney, known for his measured demeanor, opened with a call for cooperation, emphasizing the intertwined economies of the two nations. Canada, he noted, was the U.S.'s second-largest trading partner, with 900 billion Canadian dollars in annual bilateral trade. Trump acknowledged the relationship, but doubled down on his tariffs, arguing they are for the protection of American workers. Then Trump went on to propose that Canada join the United States, making the 51st state, making it one big economy, no borders, no tariffs. Carney, unflinching, met Trump's gaze. Canada is not for sale, he declared firmly. It won't be for sale, ever. He likened Canada to iconic landmarks like Buckingham Palace, priceless, sovereign, and enduring. Our nation's independence is the bedrock of who we are, Carney continued, with his voice steady but resolute. Canadians will never trade their identity for economic expediency. Even though Trump was inarguably persuasive, Carney was unrelenting, firmly holding his ground, reiterating Canada's commitment to its values. The exchange was described as tense yet respectful. Carney further pressed for tariff relief, proposing a return to fair trade negotiations, while Trump's non-committal agreed to further talks, with his desire to have Canada lingering like a shadow over the discussion. Trump's proposal, though framed as a jest, tapped into a long-standing undercurrent in U.S. political circles. For decades, fringe voices had speculated about absorbing Canada, citing its resources and proximity. But for Canadians, the idea appears as a direct challenge to their sovereignty. Carney's response wasn't just personal, but a national rebuke, signaling that Canada would not bend under pressure. Melanie Joly, Canada's foreign minister, told the BBC that she takes U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement that Canada will become his 51st state very seriously. She added that this is no longer a joke. Canadians are jeering the American national anthem before hockey games for a reason. And she went on to say, "We've been offended. We're angry. We're upset." Her remarks also followed Trump's imposition of 25% tariffs, describing the action as a very dumb thing to do. But according to U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, Trump would probably make an announcement about a deal to lower tariffs. As a result, both Canadian politics and society are feeling the need to reestablish ties with Europe. By separating from the U.S., Canada is attempting to reinterpret itself by drawing on its historical heritage and defining the parameters of a Canadian patriotism that was seldom evident before this trade conflict. The showdown didn't resolve the trade war, but it set a tone as Carney left Washington with a message. Canada would negotiate as an equal, not a subordinate. Trump, meanwhile, faced criticism at home for his provocative rhetoric, with some U.S. lawmakers urging a softer approach. The meeting, though fiery, opened the door to future talks, but only if a mutual respect prevailed. For now, Carney's words, "Canada is not for sale," stood as a rallying cry etched into the annals of diplomatic history. According to Prime Minister Mark Carney, Canada will only engage in trade and security negotiations with President Donald Trump on their terms, and he said that he believes his nation deserves respect from the U.S., and he would only travel to Washington when there is a serious discussion to be had that respected Canada's sovereignty in an exclusive interview with the BBC as the polls were coming to an end. Although only 17% of U.S. exports originate from Canada, over 75% of Canada's exports flow south, making the U.S. a sizable market for Canadian businesses. Furthermore, Canada is the United States' largest foreign supplier of crude oil. The U.S. energy demands were the main driver of America's trade deficit with Canada, which is expected to reach $45 billion. Canada's fierce commitment to sovereignty has deep roots. The 1931 Statute of Westminster granted legislative independence from Britain, a milestone in Canada's journey to autonomy. Not only that, the 1982 patriation of the Constitution, complete with Canada's status as a completely sovereign nation, was solidified by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. However, these steps, hard-fought and deliberate, shaped a national identity that Carney defended in 2025. His declaration stated this legacy, reminding the world that Canada's independence is not a commodity, but a principle, forged through history and upheld with pride. Carney's stand resonated far beyond North America. In Europe, leaders like German Chancellor Olaf Scholz expressed solidarity, affirming the sanctity of national sovereignty. In Asia, nations like Japan watched closely, wary of how U.S. protectionism might reshape global trade. Canada seized the moment, pursuing new trade deals with the EU and Asia Pacific to reduce reliance on the U.S. At the United Nations, Canada's commitment to multilateralism garnered praise, reinforcing its role as a global actor. Carney's leadership signaled a shift as Canada would diversify its partnerships, ensuring economic and diplomatic resilience. The world took note that a nation under pressure could still stand tall, shaping global dynamics with principle and resolve. The events of May 6, 2025 were more than a diplomatic spat. They were a testament to Canada's unyielding spirit. As Prime Minister Carney declared, "Canada is not for sale," he reaffirmed a truth etched in the nation's soul, which is that sovereignty is sacred. As Canada and the U.S. navigate their complex partnership, the world watches, reminded that principles endure. What do you think of this historic showdown? Share your thoughts on U.S.-Canada tensions in the comments, and subscribe to our channel for more contents that shape our world.